I got a package for a Mr. Kensington. Is there a Kensington here? Just kidding, guys. Welcome to Kensington. So excited to have you guys here for our Christmas service. I just got a quick package to drop off. And as more people are walking in, if you could crunch towards the center of the room, we'll get started shortly.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, round the young virgin, mother and child, holy and feel so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night. All is calm, all is bright. Silent night, holy night. Shepherds quake at the sight. Glory stream from heaven above. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly
my gosh, I'm so excited. It's almost Christmas time. All right, let's do this. 3, 2, 1.
Lights, please.
Rudolph, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?
No child wants to play with a Charlie in the box.
What would I wear?
Not going in our yard, Russ. It's going in our living room.
Put that cookie down! Now!
You'll shoot your eye out, kid. Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, here he comes, here he comes. Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, here he comes, here he comes.
Does someone need a hug?
Yes, there is. We sing all the time. No, it's not. Especially when we make toys. 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 Especially when we make toys. 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 Especially when we make toys. No, it's not.
Santa's coming to
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Said the night went to the little lamb. Do you see what I see? Way up in the sky, little lamb. Do you see what I see? A star, dancing in the night with a tail as big as a kite. Ooh. Said the little lamb to the shepherd boy. Do you hear what I hear? Way up in
palace warm, mighty King. Do you know what I know? A child shivers in the cold. Let us bring him silver and gold. A child shivers in the cold. Let us bring him silver and gold.
That's how you start off Christmas at Kensington. Welcome, good morning, and Merry Christmas to all of you. Whether you're in the room or watching online, we know we got a lot of people watching all over the place, locally, nationally, internationally, wherever you're at this morning. We're just so glad that you guys are. Are you glad to be here? Almost glad to be here. You will be glad as the day goes on. This is a good day. We're so glad that you are here. How about that opening set? Was that ridiculous or what? If you came in here a little bit sleepy and still needing your Starbucks, you're welcome. We just woke you up. So I think I legitimately saw somebody through the window in the back like leap when all the lights came on. So that was awesome. You just made my morning. Here's what I hope that you will not miss this morning, though. For all that was and how incredible it was, it points to something so much more than even just those minutes in that moment. It points to what is going to be our theme throughout the whole day together. And that's perfect timing. Because here's what can happen at Christmas time. Whether you have a background going to church or no background going to church, is that this season has almost been robbed by the thing called Christmas and neglects the thing that Christmas is all about. Really the one, which is Jesus. And we can end up in this mentality sometimes that the birth of Christ was this thing that happened so long ago that it almost has no bearing here and today and now in our lives. And what I hope you will see by the time we're done today is that the birth of Jesus was set in such a perfect moment of all time in creation, not just to tell us something about then, but to tell us something about now, and the perfect way that he enters into our lives and into our world right here today and in these very moments that we live. Here's what we also know this morning. There are so many of you that this is your first time here, that you've never walked into a Kensington service before, and if that's you, we are so glad that you're here with us today. We're so glad, in fact, that one of the things that we did with you in mind was put together a short video just to tell you a little bit more about who we are, and what matters to us as a community and a church. So check this out.
Hey, we're Kensington Church, a community of imperfect people with an obsession to see people transformed and mobilized by Jesus.
We're not about rules, religion, or checking the boxes, but we're all about making an impact while chasing joy and not taking ourselves too seriously.
Whether you've never been to church, or maybe you've been searching for a place to belong for ages, take a deep breath and know all you need to do is show up to a service. That's it.
It doesn't matter if your life is in order or what your background looks like. Everyone is welcome through our doors, and everyone has a place here.
When you show up at Kensington, you'll experience a practical message relevant to your life today, like how to navigate relationships and family, how to respond to cultural conversations, and how to become the person God has created you to be.
We believe the Bible is more than a history book, a psychology text, or a scientific journal.
We believe the Bible tells us who God is and his desires and plans for us.
Our hope is that when you show up, you'll experience a healthy mix of inspiration, truth, and challenge. And while you're attending services, your kids are welcome to join K-Kids, where they learn about God and have tons of fun along the way.
Once you're here at Kensington, you'll find lots of opportunities to get connected. Jump into a group, Bible study, or a course where your questions and doubts are welcomed.
People meet in coffee shops and homes where lifelong relationships are formed. And when life gets tough, we have support groups to walk you through divorce, grief, and addiction.
As counterintuitive as it sounds, our goal is to move you out of this place to impact your neighborhood, workplace, and even the world.
We travel across the globe to love and care for people. We run for clean water. We fight for victims of human trafficking.
We stand for the poor and the powerless. And we share the love of Jesus to people who've never heard it.
Locally, we unite and empower groups of people to make a difference in the places and people they care about, like in under-resourced schools and the homeless community.
We are so excited to see what God is going to do when you show up.
Like I said, if you're new this morning, we're just so glad that you're with us. A couple of things I want to encourage you to be able to do. If for you, being here is more than just a one-time thing, but you're going, man, I want to know more about this place. This could be a place for me. One thing that you can do is when you walked in, you got a card that we call the Connect card. And I just love to invite you to fill that out. Later on, when our giving bags go by, you can just slide that in there. There's going to be no harassment as a result of that. That's just a simple way for us to keep you informed of what's happening around here if you want to engage more with us. You can also fill it out online. You can go to kensingtonchurch.org/connect, and you can fill it out. And here's what's cool. So for every one of these that we get back, whether online or in a physical form, that hasn't been filled out before, we're going to donate $1 to Hope Water that provides clean drinking water to the Pokot people in Kenya, Africa, where we have already donated over $3 million to that end. So this is a cool thing. This is us saying to you, as our guests, we want to give you a chance to be a part of what we're doing globally and around the world as well. Here's another thing you can do. If you want to know more about us, you can go out to what we call the hub in the hall. So if you go in the lobby, there's the big pole. It says hub all the way around it. You can't miss it. There's people there that are going to meet with you and can answer any questions you might have and even help figure out how to navigate a little bit further if you want to know more about Kensington. Last thing I would just encourage you to do, whether you're new or not new, is make sure to put on your calendar the series that we're doing in January. The start of January, we're launching this new series called Sermons from the Seats. And here's the whole reason for this series. That the truth is, in a church, many times over, the best messages don't come from the stage. They come from you. And the things that God is not just doing in your life, but the things that you're letting him do through your life. And so we have a series for several weeks where we have recorded some of the coolest stories here at Kensington. And we're going to be showing them stories of people just like you, sitting out there on a regular Sunday that could be completely unknown, but God is doing some amazing things through them. So this is a do not miss series. So here's the last thing I'm going to ask before we go in a little bit deeper. Would you just stand up this morning, muster up the best Christmas spirit you can. I want you to say Merry Christmas and good morning to the people around you. And as you do, we have a packed house this morning. Could you just crunch in a little bit towards the center of the room and make more seats for our guests still walking in? So my name is Craig. I am one of the teaching pastors here at Clinton Township, and I have the awesome privilege of being able to share some thoughts with you about Christmas and what makes today, in our opinion, so much more than just a service and a Sunday, and certainly more than routine. But I'm going to ask you guys if you would help me kind of get things going this morning and kick it off. So a little bit of participation. Are you willing? Say yes. Yes. All right, good. I just want you to say these two things out loud. Say, timing is everything. One of my favorite times of year is right now. And I know some people go, well, that's because you're a pastor and you work at a church. No. My favorite time of year is Christmas because in all honesty, as I look over the course of my life, some of my best memories and moments occur either on or around Christmas. And some of you maybe had a moment like this. Like I remember being a kid one time, and I could hear my parents and everybody downstairs, my grandparents, and you're always wondering as a kid, like, what are they doing down there? So I remember sneaking down like late in the middle of the night, and when I came down, I was just in time to see my grandpa putting together my Lionel train set. Anybody have a Lionel train set growing up? Like that was the gift when I was a kid. And I remember catching him put it together, and then the next day I came down and they're like, here's your Lionel set. I'm like, oh, I'm so surprised. But I knew, and here's what's so cool about that and why I love that memory. That's the last memory I have of my grandpa on a Christmas before he passed away. And I'm aware, 20 minutes sooner or 20 minutes later, I could have missed that whole moment. Like timing is everything. Whether it's the timing of your beating heart that keeps you alive, or the timing of a comedian's punchline to a joke that determines whether or not he's a good comedian or a bad comedian, or the timing of a baseball pitcher's pitch that determines whether he goes pro or stays minor leagues, or even the timing of a dad and his reaction at a baseball game. Did you guys see this? Look at this picture. This is a dad at a baseball game. This was flying around just after it happened. How's that for perfect timing? Like timing is everything, right? Say it with me again. Timing is? Everything. Sure is. And here's the truth today that we're going to look at. The most incredible moment of timing that has ever occurred in all of creation took place 2,000 years ago, when a newborn Jewish baby boy laid in the obscurity of a cave and a manger and took his first breath, which would become, I believe, the most important breath that has ever been taken in all of creation. So here's what I want to do this morning. I believe very much that God is present with us. The Bible says we're just even a couple of us get together. Like there is a weightiness, a reality to his presence that is unique. I also believe that his presence isn't just here, that it was his presence that authored this book. So we're going to ask him to make sense of it as we dive into it. So let me do that right now. Father in heaven, I just pray to you for a moment and even kneel before you, who the scriptures describe and call our king. And before a king, I just feel sometimes like the posture is appropriate to be on my knees. So before you this morning, the baby who became the sacrifice, who is our king, we just acknowledge your presence, your goodness, and your greatness. And my request to you is that over the next bit of our time together, that you would speak with absolute clarity from your word. I think that in this entire environment, you're going to speak to us through music, through people this morning, through moments that you whisper that only we will hear, and through this book. And so would you give us the ability to hear your voice this morning? Thank you so much for the night 2,000 years ago when you intercepted our lives by stepping into our humanity, by putting foot into the creation that you created. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So here's what we're going to do real quick as well. We're going to take up our offering this morning. And I just want you to hear this. If you're new to church, and especially if you're new to Kensington, I just want you to feel the freedom when we pass these bags in a moment to just let them go by. Because here's what we believe about God, is that our God isn't somebody who's trying to take something from us. Matter of fact, he gives. That's who he is. So that's who we want to be as a people who give and don't take. But the thing is, there's a lot of us here that believe deeply and desperately that there is a God, that Jesus is his name, and so we want to be a part of what he's doing in this world, and so we give back to him. So if that's you, Kensington's your church, like treat this moment appropriately as those bags go by. So here's what I know about timing. Timing doesn't just have the ability to create some of our best moments, it also has the ability to create some of our most embarrassing, doesn't it? So let me tell you a story. A couple years ago, no, it wasn't even a couple years ago. I just went way off track. It was February, now that I think about it. My wife, I think, is in this room, but she knows I'm about to tell the story, so sorry, babe. February, my wife and I had plans to go on a cruise with some friends of ours, but leading up to that, she wanted to get this dress for the cruise, for the fancy night when you go to the fancy dinner. So she finds this dress online from JCPenney's. She's like, oh, honey, we got to go check out this dress at the store. I want to make sure it fits right, and look, I mean, it looks good online, but you got to see it in the store. So I'm like, all right, we'll go. It's date night to JCPenney's. So we get to JCPenney's, and she's like looking everywhere, and she cannot find this dress anywhere. She's like, oh, they don't have it. That's so frustrating. I really wanted that dress. And it was a good dress. I really wanted that dress too. I was like, man, I want that dress too. Not for me, for her. And so I'm like, I hope we find this dress. And we don't find it. And we're about to leave. And she turns around and she sees these two mannequins. And on one of the mannequins is the dress. And I know my wife, and I can see it in her eyes. Here's what I'm thinking. The introvert that I am, I'm going to go find somebody for help. and I'm gonna ask a sales rep to come do whatever they've gotta do to get that dress off of this mannequin. And here's my wife. I had no sooner thought that than she's at the mannequin shimmying the dress down the thing. Now, my introverted, insecure, when I'm in public person who thinks way too much about what other people think of me immediately starts to look around. Because we're, again, in the women's department, and we're taking a dress off of a female mannequin, or my wife is, and I'm thinking, somebody's gonna see. I'm looking around, please don't let anybody be here, please don't let anybody be here. Thankfully, nobody's there. So it gets to a point where she gets it all the way down to the ground. Now she's down here, because she's like pulled it all the way down, so she's down below all the other clothing articles, so nobody can see her. All they see is the guy standing next to the naked mannequin. And on the ground, with the dress all the way down, she realizes, I can't get it off because there's a post up the foot that's stopping me from getting the dress. So from the floor, she calls out to me, you're gonna have to pick it up. I ain't touching that thing, honey. I ain't picking up that thing. She says, pick it up. So I do one of these. I'm like, there's nobody around. And I watch this one woman come walking by, and I'm waiting for the right time that she's going to be gone. I'm like, 3, 2, 1. So I run over, and I grab the thing. Now, it's way lighter than I expected it to be, but it's still a little bit of weight to it, so I picked it up very quickly. And as I picked it up by the waist, because it had a little bit more weight than I anticipated, it slid down. So now I'm holding it like this. I mean, we're right here eye to eye. I'm like, hey, how are you? How are you? I'm like, this is really weird. Honey, get the thing off. So I'm holding it up. She gets the dress off. And now she's like trying to get the post back in the heel of the mannequin. And she's like, I can't get it in. I can't fit it. And in my nervousness, I start shouting at her, honey, I'm trying to get that. I can't find the hole to get it back on. And I'm yelling at her. And then, of course, when nobody else was there moments earlier, now this family comes walking by, a mom and 2 daughters, and the look in her eye was absolute terror and horror as we looked at each other, locked eyes, and I'm holding this naked mannequin where my wife is completely invisible below. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. So we created we did get the dress. It was amazing. We had a great time at the cruise, but we walked out of there just dying laughing. I actually just died a little inside altogether, but it was an incredible moment. Some of you right now are maybe even sitting in here going, I knew I recognized you from somewhere, you creeper. Timing is what? It's everything. This is part of what makes the birth of Jesus and the whole story of Christmas in one regard, quite honestly, seem bizarre. Because when you read the details of the birth of Jesus, the timing at surface look is completely wrong. In the book of Luke, there's an account that maybe some of you are familiar with. Chapter 1 says this of the birth of Jesus. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary, and the angel went to her and said, greetings, you who are highly favored, for the Lord is with you. And Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered, what kind of greeting is this? But the angel said to her, do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God, and you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will call him Jesus. And he will be great, and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. How will this be, Mary asked, since I am a virgin? And the angel answered her, the Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age. And she who was said to be unable to conceive is in her 6th month now. For no word from God will ever fail. I am the Lord's servant, Mary answered. May your word be to me fulfilled. And then the angel left her. Everything about this moment for this young bride-to-be seems off. All the timing seems wrong, right? I mean, just at surface value, face value, you've got this woman who, her story, her timeline is this. I'm going to have a child after I get married and after I've been with my husband. And instead, she has to go find her fiance and tell him, hey, baby, we're having a baby, actually. I mean, not we're, I am. And even though we haven't, it's okay because God did it. Like, how's that for timing? Right? And not only is this not the message that any waiting husband-to-be wants to hear, but this is a very interesting culture and time that this baby is born into, that Mary lives in. Because this is a culture and a time where an unwed mother is not looked at with any kind of joy or hope or any kindness, let alone if she's thought to have been unfaithful. It's a time when women like this are often put to death in horrible ways. How's that for timing? And then as you read through the rest of the story and other gospel accounts in the Bible of the birth of Jesus, you get these other layers of details that only seem to continue to add to this idea that the timing was all off. Like this Roman Empire-wide census that's taking place, a census the likes of which has never happened. So you have this travel of thousands and thousands of people back to their hometown to register for the census. Now, if you've been pregnant before, you know that there's nothing more uncomfortable than having to travel right near the end of your pregnancy, let alone try doing it on the back of an animal. And so this seems like the worst time to be traveling. Not to mention the fact that for this particular location that they're headed, to the town of Bethlehem, this is a small town. And everybody who originated from there is storming back to this town, a town that did not have the infrastructure to support that many people flooding back in. I mean, this was far less silent night, holy night, and it was more like Walmart on Black Friday. Like, it's just chaos. This is not good timing. And then there's an account in the Bible that actually tells us that Joseph, even though he took Mary to be his wife, they did not consummate their marriage until after Jesus' birth. So potentially up to 9 months after Joseph has made the decision that we're going to be married, I'm going to go through with this, there's no consummation. Like, how's that for timing on Joseph's part? You know what the first, I always like to joke about this. You know what the first Christmas carol was that Joseph ever sang? Have yourself a very cold shower. Like, timing is off, way off. Some of you are like, I don't get it. You will later. It's just way off. Everything is off. And then if all of that's not bad enough, there's this regional ruler of the day who is so corrupt and so insecure that the rumor of anyone else given the name king is not going to fly, including even a baby. And so enter the infamous death order, where all children 2 years and under, rumored to be born in the same area that Jesus was, are ordered to be put to death. Like, how's that for timing? And here's the thing, for some of you this morning, maybe you're going, even if you didn't know all those details, I wonder if some of you are thinking, none of that surprises me. Because maybe for some of you, the reality is those details seem to reinforce what you already believe to be true about God, which is this: if there is a God, he does have horrible timing. Because for some of you, there have just been these situations in life. I would even go as far as to say, all of us. There are situations in life where we have desperately needed somebody to intervene. And some of us have looked to God for that intervention. And the reality is, in maybe you feel like all of those moments in your life, he was either so late to the party that it didn't matter, or he was just completely MIA. Whether it was a job that you just couldn't afford to lose and it didn't matter, nobody showed up. Or a job that you needed and he didn't show up. Or a marriage that needed intervention because it was sinking. Or maybe it was an addiction or a depression, something that you were struggling with. You're like, I need you to step into this, and it just feels like he didn't. Maybe it was a phone call from a doctor with one of those types of messages that's never good to receive, but for some reason for you, it came at particularly a horrible time. Or maybe it was just a prayer that even now, even recently, even this week you've prayed, and it just feels like nobody's listening. And I think this is one of the reasons why the Bible speaks so much to this subject of time and timing. One of the places that I think captures this concept so well is in a book in the Old Testament called Ecclesiastes, where the author talks about God's work all throughout time, but the timing of God's work in time. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 says this: there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. And then if you skip down to verse 11, he says this: he, being God, has made everything beautiful in its time. And he has also set eternity into the human heart. He has made everything beautiful. That means every broken moment, every dream unfulfilled, every hurt, every pain, everything. He says God makes it all beautiful. But when? In his time. In his time. And then if you read through the scriptures, there are over 800 different references to the issue of time and timing and seasons. Like, I think God's trying to tell us something. Time matters, and timing matters. In a book in Galatians in the New Testament, there's actually a specific verse that references the timing of the not-so-silent night that Jesus entered humanity. Galatians chapter 4 says this, verse 4. But when the set time had fully come, so when the set time had fully come, this wasn't a random moment. This was God in his divine nature looking at that day, that night, that moment, and going, that's when it will happen. And when that set time had come, God sent his son, born of a woman and born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Now, here's what's interesting and not necessarily obvious unless you understand the Bible even better than most of us do, is that the part of the Bible that we just read from was originally written in the Greek language. And in the Greek language, there's more than one word for the word time. And in this particular verse, there's two different words being used for time. Chronos, which is where we get the word chronology, and then there's kairos. Now, what's fascinating about both of these words is because of their difference coming together in one verse is it tells us something so much bigger about the decision of God to bring himself into humanity in that moment. I mean, let me show you on the screen some of the differences between the two words. So chronos, for example, it speaks of the quantity of time. It's the minute after minute after minute after minute. It's just how much we have. And so that means it's always what? Decreasing. We're never getting more of chronos. But kairos speaks to the quality of time, which means that even as the minutes decrease, kairos has the ability to increase. Then you've got chronos, which is measured in minutes, and kairos, which is measured in moments. Chronos, which is finite. Kairos, which is infinite. Both of these words are at play in this place, which means that God is saying, I added up the minutes to create the appropriate moment to bring myself into your world. Here's what one author I read recently says about kairos. Kairos moments are these. They are the experiences that let us glimpse the other side and peek into eternity. Moments where the mortal and the immortal, the secular and the sacred, all beautifully and perfectly collide together. Here's the question though. Why was that the appropriate kairos? Why was that the appropriate time that all the minutes led to that moment? Why wasn't it 500 years earlier? And why didn't Jesus come 500 years from now? You can make a great argument that there's technology now that didn't exist then that will probably exist 500 years from now that doesn't exist now. Why was that the moment? Why then, in the Middle East, in this little obscure town, through those specific details, to that specific culture and to those specific people? I don't know if you've ever wondered that, but we have, genuinely. That has been a question we have wondered for a time here. And it's led to this whole direction we're taking this morning. And when you look at and pull back a little bit to look at the historical setting in which Jesus came, it's amazing because you begin to see some of the pieces that are working themselves out that make so much more clarity about the reality that God really did add up the minutes to the moment. Watch this video.
December 25th is one of the most well-known dates around the world, Christmas Day, the day that Jesus was born. Now about that, Jesus was not actually born on December 25th. No one knows the exact date he was born, but the best educated guess we have is sometime in September. I mean, can you imagine celebrating Christmas before the leaves even fall? Most of the holiday music would have to be rewritten. But the actual day and time Jesus was born is not nearly as important as the timing of Jesus' arrival. So let's back it up a millennium or so. From 1700 to 1300 BCE, the Israelites are enduring 400 years of slavery and cry out for a savior. God gives them Moses. Great guy, did a ton of incredible things, but Moses is not the Messiah. The timing wasn't right. From 1000 to 930 BCE, the people begged God for a king, so God gave them one. Wrong king. That's better. King Saul. Didn't work out so well. But then King David, followed by King Solomon, took over. It was glorious, but they were both deeply flawed, which led to a divided kingdom. The timing wasn't right. From 586 to 538 BCE, the Israelites are captured into slavery by the Babylonians, and they cry out for a savior. Cyrus the Great defeats the Babylonians and allows the Israelites to return back to Jerusalem. But Cyrus is not the Messiah that people have been waiting for. The timing wasn't right. So how about the Romans taking over and putting the nation of Israel under great oppression? Well, it sounds awful, but believe it or not, the timing was right. Here are a few reasons why. For the first time in history, the Mediterranean world, the cradle of civilization, was unified. The Romans had constructed the famous Roman roads. You know, like the saying goes, all roads lead to Rome. So this allowed messengers to travel safely with news and ideas. Ships, too, had come of age. Several nations shared the highway that the Mediterranean Sea had become. This was yet another means for the message of Christ to spread far and wide. There's also this thing called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace that had lasted over 200 years. So Jesus was born when this began, and it meant a relatively calm environment for his arrival. The Romans were permissive about religions as long as there wasn't any trouble and the Jews had paid a nice little tax. Stability and relative tolerance opened the world to the spread of a new idea. Roads and shipping lanes made it happen quickly and efficiently. But there was another key factor: language. For many years, people almost everywhere continued to speak Greek. This shared language made it possible for Paul and others to travel to many countries and tell people the good news of Jesus without cumbersome translation. In the Old Testament, there are approximately 65 direct predictions about the coming of the Messiah. And one of those predictions is in the book of Micah. And it said that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, which sounds great and all, but Joseph and Mary were in Nazareth 70 miles away. So here's what happened. Caesar Augustus started this thing called the Beautification Program. Basically, he wanted statues of himself all over Rome. And the program needed money, and the best way to get money was to tax the people. Caesar issues this decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world, so that more people in the books, more people paying taxes. So everyone went to their own town to register. So Bethlehem was the birthplace of Joseph's father. And so Joseph and Mary needed to head to Bethlehem, arriving just in time for the birth of Jesus. Like the gears of a small Swiss watch, God orchestrated all of it: governments, travel, arrogant leaders, prophecies, and even taxes. God maneuvered all of them perfectly over thousands of years for this one event. It was perfect timing.
Isn't that awesome? Like, the birth of Jesus was anything but random. And the night he entered into humanity, it wasn't coincidence of timing. It was perfect timing. And I think part of the message of Christmas is not just that God's entrance into humanity was perfect then. I think part of the message of Christmas is to let you and I know that what he did then, he still does now. And the perfect way he interacted with us then is the perfect way he interacts with us now. It's the perfect way he interacts with you, with me. And to some of you that would maybe even be sitting here going, I don't know, man, because I feel like the perfect time would have been another time. He missed that time. I just want to tell you that I don't know what he's up to, but I do know this. The God who perfectly entered creation when he did longs to perfectly enter your life and your moments and your frustrations and your struggles at the time that is Kairos. It may not be the minute you want him, but it will be the moment he is working to create for you. Because that's what he does. He is perfect in his timing, because timing is what? Timing is everything. When I was a kid, one of the things that we used to do all the time is go to this beach in Canada called Point Pelee. And I remember this one time we were really young. I don't remember how old I was, but it was like wingy things to float young. And I remember taking them off and going out so far out into the water that I hit this dip and I went under, and I couldn't swim at the time. And I remember I could see, like if I looked up, I could see the surface of the water, but reaching my hand all the way up, I couldn't quite break the water. So I would have to squat down and I'd have to push myself up to break the surface of the water. And I would cry out to my dad, because he and I were the only ones out there. The water was freezing that day, and we were the only one dumb enough to go in the water. So he's way out in the little ring tubey thing, and I'm just bursting the surface yelling, Dad, and going back under. And this goes on back and forth and back and forth. Here's the problem. My dad not only is the only one out there that can help me, he's blind. Like, totally blind. No eyes in his head, can't see, blind. And so I'm shouting to my dad, who has no way to hone in on me except to hear me. And I remember this particular point where I probably wasn't like near the moment of death, but I didn't have many minutes left, because I was getting to the point that every time I'd break the surface, I would suck water in. Dad, go out, and I'd come down and I would squat. And I remember this one moment. that I squatted down, and as I burst up towards the surface, my dad's hand went right down and grabbed me midway burst, lifted me all the way up and plopped me right on his lap. I never hugged the hairy chest of a naked man so hard as that moment. And my dad then took me to, I do not know how my blind dad found me out there in the middle of that lake. But I'll tell you this, he found me at the right time. And it felt like as I was going under the water, the right time would have been a lot sooner. But the right time was when I needed him, and he was there. Timing is everything. And I think one of the people in the Bible that seemed to have grasped this with an incredible weight and reality was one of the people we just talked about in that video, David, one of the ancient kings of Israel. Not just a king of Israel, but if you don't know David, then you may not know this. He authored the largest book in the Bible called Psalm. And as you read through Psalms, it's like this kind of autobiography of him pouring out in psalm after psalm his heart, his frustrations, his questions, his doubts, even with God. But then in the very next hand, and sometimes in the very next verses, he would also usher up to God his absolute, deeply abiding hope and trust in God's ability to take the most broken minutes of life and turn them into incredible moments. And what I love about the Psalms as you read through them, because they were literally written to be songs, is that there are times that David, who is a musician, writing these songs, would literally start off at the top of the Psalms with this phrase, to the tune of. It's like he just knew that no matter the weight of these words, they had to be carried in a certain tune if they were going to be fully grasped. And what I love about that is the fact that my son is a musician. And I don't know where he gets it from because his mom and I are not musically inclined. God has just genuinely given him an ability. And I remember he's 16 now, from whatever, I think he was like 8 or 9 when he started playing. And from the first time he started playing guitar, like he genuinely had a talent where we were like, wow, like he knows how to, he gets music. And he would listen to a song and like he'd have the timing down. The problem is when he had the timing, he didn't always have the tuning. And so there were a lot of times early on where I'd go, yeah, dude, I think you got the song. Your guitar's horribly out of tune though. Can you fix that? And like his problem was never really the tuning. It was, or not timing, it was his tuning. And I just wonder, here's what I'm thinking. Like, is that possibly true for some of us? Like as we go through life, we think that the problem is God's timing. And the problem isn't God's timing. The problem is our tuning. See, we're like trying to tune ourselves into all the wrong things in life to give us meaning or hope or security or fix problems, resurrect things that have hurt and passed and died in our life. And what God is saying is, tune yourself to me, tune yourself to me, tune to a different strength, a different source, a different place, a different hope. What if the problem has nothing to do with God's timing and has everything to do with our tuning? Because this is what David seemed to have this ability to choose constantly to do, is to tune his focus, regardless of what he was going through, to a truth that was so much bigger than any problem he faced. And that truth is simply this. Sometimes when it feels like God missed the minute that you needed him, the reality is he was there, creating the moment that would transform you. One of the things we're going to do for a minute is we're going to watch this video of a guy named Joe who's a part of Kensington, and an incredible story of how God in the last few years has given him the ability to look over the course of his life and see that in some of his most broken minutes, God was present, creating incredible moments. Watch this.
I've had this persona of my whole life, like I've tried to guard the world from that part of my life. And it was like what I wanted the world to see, of my life, and then going back to what really happened. I was born to a 14-year-old drug addict. So the first few years of our lives were on the streets. I saw things and went through things that I don't think any kid should ever go through. My mom had kind of come through a space of where she was trying to clean herself up a little bit, and for the first time in a long time, we actually had a place to live. The neighbor, the lady that lived next to us, would watch me on Wednesday nights, and she started going to this church, and it was really great. As a child, all I knew was there were people there that were kind, compassionate, caring. In particular, there was one guy there that was really, just really kind to me and nice. And I went home and I told my mom about him, and she agreed to come to church with me to meet this guy. and who eventually ended up being my dad. Unfortunately, my mom couldn't beat those addictions, and I think that she had to go back to to living that life that she just couldn't seem to beat, and she ended up leaving him. She took me with her, and I just didn't want to be with her. I wanted my family back, and so there was a point where she took me back to my dad's house, and I'll never forget standing in that driveway, and just pulling up there and standing there, and she's basically set me on the doorstep and told my dad, if I don't really want him anymore, so either you take him or I'm going to put him up for adoption. It got to the point where I couldn't amass enough things to feel whole. It's like I'd get a suite here or a suite at a venue, the Lions or at Michigan Stadium or the Auburn Hills, the Pistons. And I remember vividly standing out on this suite and watching a basketball game. And I can really remember what I was wearing, and I just remember standing there thinking, you know what, I don't even like basketball. I'm not even a fan. I have this suite because it's what I want people to see, and I want them to see me standing out here. One night I came home from work, and I had just finished a long day, was tired, exhausted, and it just kind of hit me. It hit me almost like a ton of bricks, like something fell on me. And I kind of fell to my knees, and I actually ended up on the ground in a fetal position. And I know that the Holy Spirit was breaking me at that point. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I know that I couldn't do it anymore on my own. I was convicted that I had been chasing all the wrong things, and just not on God's path and not on what He wanted for me in my life. I was a strong guy. I was a powerful entrepreneur, and to be curled up on the closet floor was humbling. I had started attending church again on a regular basis, and eventually I met my wife. So as our journey here at Kensington continued, we got more involved, my wife and I did. One of the directors here came to me and offered me the opportunity to get into the LIVE training, which was absolutely amazing. It was just a great journey of finding out where God is in your journey, and where He wants you to move out to. In one particular exercise, we were to go back to the time where we first felt any worthlessness. For me, it was the worthlessness. When would I feel worthless for one of the first times in my life? And I thought back to that time when my mom dropped me off at my dad's house. The second part of the exercise was that you zoom out of it now and see, where was Jesus in that moment, or how did He lift you out of that moment? I remember zooming back and putting myself back in that situation, and instead of my mom grabbing me by my shoulders, I saw Jesus grabbing me by my shoulders. And He put me on that step. And He said, take care of my son. Just take care of him. I'm going to take him from this situation. He's not going back to it. And I'm going to put him in a situation that I can use him later. All those times in my life, as I look back, of those bad situations, and then to zoom out and see where He was in it, it's amazing. He's there. He's never, ever left me. Consequently, as I've gone through this faith journey, and quite frankly, there's just been some business decisions too that have taken me to the point of not being an owner anymore. I got out of my last dealership, and I didn't know where God was really pointing me. I took some time to really think about that and pray on that and reflect a lot on it. So I got approached by a friend of mine to go and visit a group over on the west side of the state, and really wasn't looking for a job at the time. I remember meeting with them afterwards, and one of the owners asked me, he said, so what's next? What do you want to do with your career? Where, it was almost like an interview, so to speak. And I said, you know what? I just want to advance God's kingdom. I remember driving home and I'm talking to my wife on the phone, and she asked me, she said, how'd it go? How'd it go? You know, how do you think it went? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't think, you know, I don't think they really heard what they wanted to hear from me, you know. But it's okay, you know. So I was at peace with it, and I remember getting home and talking to them later, and they're like, yeah, they'd like you to come help us out. So, like, really? You know, I thought I blew that one. I'm a director with their company now. You know, I've taken over a pretty big role in their company. God has just completely put people in my path for me to be able to tell my story. I've been able to witness and advance God's kingdom and talk about the things that, you know, that I've gone through and the pitfalls that I fell into in my career. But I think when you step back and you really look at where you are in any of those situations, if we're sitting here today, we're probably on our way, or at least we're in a safe place. And you know, I think whatever situation you're in, He's lifted you out of it and He sat you right here.
What a story. And I think some of you probably could identify with that. There was a moment that God clearly stepped into your reality, and He started to connect the dots of all your minutes and turned the broken minutes into an incredible moment. But here's what I also think is that some of us feel like we're still here. Like whatever the porch is for you. It was a very real porch for Joe. But some of you are still maybe on the porch. And in the moment, it feels like it's not a moment. It's just a broken minute. And I don't know why God hasn't stepped into mine yet. Maybe for some of you, there's no connection to the dots yet. Maybe for some of you, you're still looking out on the water for something or someone else on a raft to come bail you out of this thing. Whether the bailing out is even just giving a sense of worth and purpose and meaning or hope, or maybe it's really fixing something. And that's why the next song that we're going to do, I love this song for so many reasons. For one, because it was written specifically for today. Like this is the premiere of this moment song, but it's also such a powerful song in the words of the song, because what it speaks to is the fact that in His perfect timing, God really did walk into creation, paused everything to step into our world, to ultimately step into yours, to take you and I by the hand, and for one ultimate reason in that embrace, to walk us on a journey to teach us of His love, to teach us of His hope. And that the power of that relationship has the ability to connect all the minutes of your life to speak to you of the moment He's trying to create.
You, my whole world was a combination of events without cause, wandering aimlessly in a direction that I could not find. I was searching for a reason to press on, and longing just to make the darkness fade. Yet in my own strength, I always seem to come up short. But then you stepped into my reality with the force of love to change history. You made my world stand still as you introduced me to grace, to grace. And just like that, you waltz through time. You take my hand, show me what's yours, and make it mine. You free my soul, you call me your own. You know exactly how to make life beautiful. You're beautiful. in a world full of hurt and pain. Many wondering where will hope come from. Distractions from every angle. When will it make sense? My chaos is at its highest, while my joy seems to reach its lowest point. I'm tethered to the weight of worry, with no escape inside. But then you stepped into my reality with the force of love to change history. You made my world stand still as you introduced me to grace, to grace. And just like that, you walked through time. You take my hand, show me what's yours, and make it mine. You free my soul, you call me your own. You know exactly how to make life beautiful. You're beautiful. You're always forward, never back. You see beginning to the end. You made a story so unique I still can't comprehend. Magnitude of your heart, and there's still more in store. You know every star by name. I thought my life worth coming for, coming for, coming for. And just like that, you walked through time. You take my hand, show me what's yours, and make it mine. You free my soul, you call me your own. You know exactly how to make life beautiful. And just like that, you walk through time. You take my hand and make it mine. You free my soul, call me your own. You know exactly how to make life beautiful. You're beautiful.
In those days, Caesar Augustus made a law. It required that a list be made of everyone in the whole Roman world. It was the first time a list was made of the people while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Everyone went to their own town to be listed. So Joseph went also. He went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea. That is where Bethlehem, the town of David, was. Joseph went there because he belonged to the family line of David. He went there with Mary to be listed. Mary was engaged to him. She was expecting a baby. While Joseph and Mary were there, the time came for the child to be born. She gave birth to her first baby. It was a boy. She wrapped him into large strips of cloth. Then she placed him into a manger. That's because there was no guest room where they could stay. There were shepherds living out in the fields nearby. It was night, and they were taking care of their sheep. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. They were terrified, but the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news. It will bring great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. Here's how you will know I'm telling you the truth. You will find a baby wrapped in strips of cloth and lying in a manger." Suddenly, a large group of angels from heaven also appeared. They were praising God. They said, "May glory be given to God in the highest heaven, and may peace be given to those he is pleased with on earth." Then the angels left and went into heaven. The shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's see the thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby. The baby was lying in a manger. After the shepherds had seen him, they told everyone. They reported what the angel had said about this child. All who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary kept all these things like a secret treasure in her heart. She thought about them over and over. The shepherds returned. They gave glory and praise to God. Everything had seen and heard is just as they had been told. And just like that, you waltz through time. You take my hand, show me what's yours, and make it mine. You free my soul, call me your own. You know exactly how to make life beautiful. You're beautiful.
I love that line that you waltz through time. I don't know what you think about that right now. I don't know if this is just what you do at Christmas if you go to church, or if maybe there's something you're feeling, there's something stirring, a new thought, a sense of something maybe you haven't felt before or in a long time. But he waltzed through time for you, specifically. If you were the only person that existed, he would have waltzed through time for you still. There's a place in the Bible, in a book called John, where one of the most powerful things, but also one of the harshest things in a way, is recorded that Jesus ever said. It's one of the boldest statements he ever made. And it's a statement that when you understand it in context of this idea that he came, God came. We're talking about the being that created all things. It didn't say, "Come find me." That didn't say, "Make sure that your list of good stuff outweighs bad stuff, then you'll get to me." That God came to us. When you understand what we're about to read, in light of that, you realize that he didn't just come to us, he's the only one coming. John says this, "And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back, and I'll take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. And you know the place where I'm going." He's talking to his disciples, and they're having a conversation that many of us and all of us have had at different times about life and death and afterlife and how and where and what. And they're confused. And Thomas says, "Lord, we don't know where you're going. So how can we know the way?" And Jesus answered him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him, and you have seen him." In a world and in a culture that loves the idea that whatever you want will get you to God, whatever thought, whatever idea, whatever path, this, from Jesus, seems very exclusive, very narrow-minded. It seems very harsh. I'm the only way to God. Seems almost like a power trip. Until you start to read a verse and a statement like that in context with Christmas, and this idea that God came to us. He didn't make us come find him, he came to us. You start to realize that what he's trying to say to all of us is not this power trip like my way or the highway thing. What he's saying is, no matter how far you look on the water, there's no one else coming. But I did. And I will come for you again and again and again, because I am nuts about you. And I don't know this morning how you would describe your life. Like if the timing is all working out for you, or if you would say the minutes, they're just not adding up. But here's what I do know. I don't think you're here by coincidence. Some of you are here because you came to celebrate Jesus. There was a moment that he clearly walked into your life and you embraced that. And some of you are here because someone invited you, or you just came because you wanted to check things out and this seemed like a great time to do it. I don't think it's by coincidence that you're here. I think it's by God's perfect design that you're here right now in this moment. That's why I love what pastor and author Rick Warren says about time. He says there are two things that it's always the right time to do. One is to return to God. Because maybe you did make a decision for Jesus at one point, but something got in the way and you wandered off. He didn't go anywhere. It's always the right time to return. But it's also always the right time, any time, to turn to him for the first time and accept his love and accept his grace and accept the truth that he waltzed through time for you, every one of you. And here's what I know, because some of us, we have this resistance to God. We're like, man, I'm not really religious. Great, neither is Jesus. But he is amazing. And he did everything he did for you. And so here's what I would just love to do, is invite you to have a moment that is your moment. That maybe everything doesn't start to make sense right now, but enough makes sense that in this moment you can say, all right, there's a God, and Jesus is him. He died and he resurrected, and I don't get everything. Welcome to the rest of our party, neither do we. But you can go, but I'm willing to accept that. Man, if that's you, then here's what I just want to do. I'm going to invite you to have a very intentional moment yourself of saying yes to Jesus. And there's no particular way to do this. It's not like a specific prayer you pray for every service. This might sound a little bit different this weekend. But I want to lead you in a moment to acknowledge out loud yes to Jesus. So would you just do this with me? For all of you in this room, can we just have kind of a sacred moment? Would you just close your eyes for a minute with me? And if you're sitting here going, all right, I want to say yes to him. If he walked through time for me, then yes. If he came for me, then this moment I am coming to him. Then just out loud, would you just say these words with me? Dear Jesus, I acknowledge you as existing God. And I pray right now with belief that you are crucified and resurrected. You are Lord. And I pray to give you my life and receive yours. Amen. You might go, wait a minute, that's it? Yeah, here's the beautiful thing. There's so much more to say in relationship with him, but that's where it begins. And what's so powerful about the moment that we just had there is that the Bible tells us 2,000 years ago, the light of creation entered creation. One light, 2,000 years ago, laid in a manger, the light of all creation. And what happened from 2,000 years ago to this very moment now is that light literally just transcended over time and space to this room, to you. And the incredible and powerful thing about that light is if you allow it, it will not just burn bright within you, it will spread through you, around you, and all over like fire.
Noel, the angels did say, was too certain for shepherds in fields where they lay, in fields where they lay, keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was and saw a star shining in the east, beyond them far, and to the earth it gave great light, and so it continued both day and night. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Would you stand and join us in song? Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory streams from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing Alleluia. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant gleams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth.
I would tell you, in all honesty, this is one of my favorite moments of the entire year. Would you just look around if you haven't yet? Like, how powerful of a visual is this? Matter of fact, even do this. Would you take it and lift it up? This is what the light of Jesus does. It illuminates everything. Everything. Would you bring them down with me? We're gonna take a minute. We're gonna blow these out together on the count of 3. Would you do this though? Make sure to put your hand in front of it so you don't blow wax into the hair in front of you. That'd be a really bad way to say Merry Christmas. You ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Now here's the thing. A candle goes out, but the joy of Jesus does not. And there's probably no better time or truer moment to celebrate the joy of Christ than at Christmas, when we embrace the fact that the light of the world waltzed through time into our lives to burn his joy in us forever.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. All right, we're gonna sing that same verse again, and I want to hear ya. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills, and plains repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. He rules the world. Here we go. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations through. The glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. Of his love, and the wonders of his love, and wonders of his love.
Man. In my head, I sound that good. And then I sing out loud. Wow. Timing is. I hope it was a great time for you this morning, and we're just so thankful of all the places you could be right now and all the places you could have gone to celebrate Christmas. We're beyond thankful that you did it with us and you did it here. Just the one thing I would like to say to you before you leave is, if you made that decision this morning for Jesus, and it was a moment for you where you went, yes, he waltzed through time for me, and you embraced that, here's what I want to invite you to do. There's gonna be a team of people down front that are here to just meet you, encourage you in that decision, pray with you if you would like that, but most importantly, they want to put some tools and resources in your hand that will help you know what steps to start to take on the most incredible journey that you're about to be on, which is the journey with Jesus. So make sure to come down and see them before you walk out. We hope for the rest of you, we will see you in the weeks to come, next week and in January for our new series. You are loved. Merry Christmas. Have a great Christmas.
Templeton is actually sending this along.
Son of God, love's pure light, round a young virgin, mother and child, holy and feel so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight. Glory stream from heaven above. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. America.